Here's an easy one for you. All women are human. Some humans are evil. Ergo, some women are evil. Easy, right? And yet, for some reason, there is a cohort of people who can't simply comprehend this fact. Not this notion, not this theory, this fact. And so they insist that anytime you dare criticize or hate, dislike something about a woman or what she's done, it's always down to two things and two things only: jealousy and misogyny. Sometimes they throw in racism if it's a woman of color, but the two main aspects are the former. And these people are everywhere. They can be found in my comments section, which they frequently flood to for some reason. And they can be found authoring inane, reductive, lazy articles for the cut.
Why do these women inspire such rage? Nothing riles the internet up more than Meghan Markle and Blake Lively. Written by E.J. Dixon. By most metrics, With Love, Meghan Markle's new Netflix lifestyle series, would be considered a moderate success.
Agreed. 12.6 million hours or so clocked in the first week is indeed a moderate success. I'm glad the author used the word moderate here because it wasn't anything groundbreaking, which is sort of what you'd expect from the likes of Meghan Markle's infamy and resources. But since we're talking metrics, and we know where this article is going, I'd also like to point out that by most metrics, Meghan Markle was once a beloved woman. And as far as I'm aware, she was still biracial back in 2017, although a lot of people didn't see it and they thought she was white. And a lot of them probably still do today, despite her criminal overuse of bronzer, self-tanner, and the race card. But back then she was younger, more beautiful, which you think would have inspired more of this jealousy that they seem to be accusing us of nowadays. And yet people all over the world loved her, or at least were incredibly happy for Prince Harry finally finding the one. This is important, and it cannot be glossed over, because these people like to pretend that the past doesn't exist.
It debuted in Netflix's global top 10 earlier this month and has already been renewed for a second season.
Renewed? I don't think so. I know that's the narrative they're pushing, but that's a very manipulative way of framing things when you consider that they had already filmed all 16 episodes pretty much in one hit back to back. And so this second part was always going to be released. Netflix wasn't going to just waste the millions upon millions invested into this thing just because the first season didn't do as well.
Some of the items featured on the show, like a Le Creuset pan and a belted shirt dress from Cézanne, have already sold out online.
I'm not sure about this sold out claim. It's a narrative that a lot of Meghan Markle's proponents love to push, including Ted Sarandos. We talked about this in a previous video, how the Hermes blanket did not sell out. It's just the Google searches went up by 500%. But I looked up this claim that Le Creuset, however you pronounce it, sold out. But all I can find was over 300 of these pots or pans sold within the last 2 weeks, which isn't the same as being sold out. I can't find any evidence of anything selling out other than a page 6 headline of the things that she's listed on her Shop My storefront, so her affiliate program, basically. Which, come on, from Duchess to affiliate pushing influencer, that's quite a fall. Although, at one point in this page 6 article, this defender, Alexandra McCormick, says that her critics hate her and then buy her clothes anyway? Who? When? I don't know, maybe I'm living under a rock, and if I am, I'd like to stay there, thank you. Don't pull me out of it.
But for many of Markle's biggest haters, the show was a prime opportunity to revisit their rancor.
All right, hold up. I can't speak for other women, okay? But I don't hate Meghan Markle or Blake Lively for that matter, or even Amber Heard, who was mentioned in this article. Of course she was. In fact, I was just a kid at university, when Meghan joined the royal family. And apart from the red flags that even my young self couldn't ignore back in 2017, I forgot about them. And I actually liked her. I've been very open about this. In fact, there is evidence of this on my channel way back in 2021, in January or so. I defended her. I made a video about her privacy and copyright claim against, was it the Mail, whomever, about that letter she wrote her father. And while I was never a fan, you can clearly see that I was pro Meghan Markle. In fact, I would even venture to say at some point right after the wedding, I kind of looked up to her. So this whole argument of you're all just jealous, which you'll find in the comment section of this article. You're jealous that she's picked up the prince that you couldn't get your hands on. First of all, I am an entire generation younger than Meghan and Harry. I have nothing in common with them, and I wouldn't date or be with Prince Harry if you paid me. And I'm sure a lot of women, younger or older, feel the same. As for Blake, she was a non-entity to me. I just knew her as Ryan Reynolds' wife. I didn't even know what she sounded like until that interview of hers with Kirsty Floss started doing the rounds. So no hate here. Not even Amber Heard. Because criticizing bad, evil behavior does not equate to hate. And critiquing something as huge as With Love Meghan that was put out by a very infamous person on a huge platform is not hate either. It's called critiquing. And it's something that we all do. There are people with full-time jobs who do it, for heaven's sake. You've got food critics and movie critics, music critics, fashion critics. Are all these people hating? Sure, there's an element of entertainment put in, such as my review of Meghan's show. It was deliberately sardonic, in case anyone missed out on that, which a lot of her defenders clearly did. It was meant to be sarcastic. It was meant to be humorous, and thankfully the majority of the world who watched it understood that. Having said that, what the Sussex Squad and the Meghan defenders do, now that is hate. The doxing, the stalking, the death threats. For me personally, the vile personal attacks in my comment section that I get bombarded with on an hourly basis at this point, if not more frequently. That is hate. That is misogyny. And that is bullying. Dare I say jealousy? I guess a lot of women are jealous of little old nobody me.
To judge from these reactions, you'd think Markle was guilty of a far greater crime than simply making a mediocre TV show.
These are basically the exact same comments my review of Meghan's show has been getting flooded with. Because unfortunately, for a small-time creator like myself, when a video does do well and it gets a lot more views than you normally do, you start attracting people from outside your subscriber base. And when that happens, they bring in the nasty sometimes. And so a lot of the comments under that video go something like, "You're such a hateful person. What did she ever do to you? You're so jealous." Shake my head. I don't know why Meghan Markle gets all this hate. She never killed anyone. Because that's the measure of our morality nowadays, isn't it? Things have gotten so bad that if you haven't killed anyone, you must be a good person. And by that metric, hello, I've never killed anyone. And so all the mean, hateful comments that you leave on my channel while you're defending someone else who also hasn't killed someone, yeah, that's misogyny. But to respond to this author, E.J. Dixon, as far as I'm aware, the world didn't start on the 4th of March of 2025. We're not living in a vacuum here. The past exists and it matters. And if you'd been awake over the past almost decade now, then you'd know that Meghan Markle is indeed guilty of a far greater crime than, how did you put it? Simply making a mediocre TV show. And luckily for you, I have an entire channel dedicated to calling all these things out, so have at it. But as an entree before the main course, should you dare to taste it, here's a sample of what you can expect. Lying, including to a court of law, bullying, defamation, and using dead children and other tragedies for self-promotion. Does that sound like a far greater crime than a mediocre TV show?
Markle's feud with the British royal family, whom she accused of colluding with the British media to smear her in the press and of turning a blind eye to her mental health issues, cemented her as a liar and a narcissist in the eyes of her haters.
It wasn't her feud that cemented her as a liar and a narcissist in the eyes of the world. It's her actions, her lies, and her narcissism. And again, much like the previous point, I could really go on, but we'd be here a very long time. I'm talking years. You know what? I can't move on without specific examples. Here you go. When I said lying, she lied about her own wedding. You know, when she said they got married 3 days before the actual royal wedding, that was a spectacle.
3 days before our wedding, we got married.
She lied about the alleged racism that she faced in the royal family, and we know this because of her own husband.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
No, we didn't. The British press said that.
She said there were troubling comments about
there was concern about his skin colour.
Right. Wouldn't you describe that as essentially racist?
I wouldn't, not having lived within that family.
She lied about paying her way through university, and she did this on a world stage, giving a speech in Fiji as part of her duties during that royal tour in 2018. Her dad paid her way through, by the way, and I already mentioned how she lied, or misled, I should say, a court of law, which is actually a crime, by the way, if she is ever to be prosecuted for it, which she never will be, called perjury. I've actually looked into E.J. Dixon on the cut. I didn't go, looking her up outside of it to see the flavor of articles that she normally pens. For instance, she wasn't shy to call out Taylor Swift's penchant for holding grudges against every single person in the world and profiting off of them, writing songs about them. Listen to what she had to say about her.
There is no one on the planet more prone to pettiness, who more revels in rancor, who more assiduously accounts for slights against her that are both large and small. No other celebrity, with the possible exception of our current president, comes even close.
This is not going to be political, but The Cut is a very heavily left-leaning publication, as Ground News very helpfully tells me. Ground News is basically my new search engine, by the way. I don't even bother with Google anymore. Now I know, before I click on an article, what to expect. And by the way, I've got a 40% discount off for you in the description box if you're interested in getting this, I suppose, kind of behind-the-scenes sneak peek into the true nature of a publication. The Cut is very well known. We know it's left-leaning, but there might be publications that you just don't know what to expect out of them, and you don't want to be duped. You don't want to be swayed by their biases. So if you're interested, then again, just visit the link in the description box for 40% off a Vantage plan. But back to the story. From a very heavily left-leaning publication, obviously this was meant to be an insult. Such a feminist hero E.J. Dixon is. Such an inspiration. She goes on and specifically calls out Taylor's reliance or over-reliance on misogyny claims.
There are many, many examples of this in her oeuvre, but the one that stands out to me is the song The Man from her 2019 album Lover, in which Swift gripes that she's so sick of running as fast as I can, wondering if I'd get there quicker if I was a man. When I first heard this song, my eyes rolled into the back of my head. The idea that the most rich and famous pop star in the world could purport to be held back by her gender struck me as so tone-deaf as to be borderline insane. A woman who is worth more than $1 billion believes misogyny is holding her back? From achieving what exactly, I remember thinking? What more does this woman want?
So let me get this straight. When Blake's ex-bestie Taylor Swift complains about misogyny and woe is me, it's ridiculous. It's borderline insanity. And yet when equally successful, famous, and affluent women such as Blake and Meghan, all women who have tremendously benefited from the patriarchy by playing according to its rules, by marrying up, complain about the exact same thing, suddenly it's misogyny. Sounds like E.J. Dixon might be suffering from a little thing called bias. Basically, if she likes you, you're worth defending, and if she doesn't, she calls you out.
Now, people are comparing her to Blake Lively. Like Markle's allegations against the royal family and the British media, there is nothing terribly outlandish or unbelievable about Lively's claims, yet people have responded to them as if they are obvious lies. More than that, they've responded with outrage.
There is nothing terribly outlandish about Blake's accusations on paper if you haven't done your due diligence as a reporter, as a journalist, E.J. Dixon, by reading the other side's claims as well. And people have only responded to them as if they were obvious lies when we saw the evidence presented by Justin Baldoni. And as for the outrage, I think that's a strong word. I certainly don't feel any outrage. But when the world learned that not only did Justin present the evidence, but presented evidence of Blake doctoring her own evidence, doctoring text messages on purpose, manipulating the evidence to mislead the world. I wouldn't be surprised if it spurred outrage. Wouldn't you be outraged if someone did that to you or someone you loved?
There is now an entire cottage industry of TikTokers and gossip vloggers attempting to publicly discredit Lively.
I don't think there is any need to publicly discredit Lively because she's done it all on her own. Or rather, Justin Baldoni's team are doing an excellent job of it. Not by he said, she said, but again, by actual evidence.
Tellingly, most of her detractors are women.
Yeah, because most of the audience, the target audience, the people who are interested in this story happen to be women. It ain't rocket science.
Many, like the notorious conspiracy theorist and anti-Semite Candace Owens and former Fox News host Megyn Kelly, are explicitly right-wing. In one episode of her podcast, Kelly uses a rather anodyne clip of Lively talking about her desire to transition from acting to writing and directing as evidence of her nature as a serial fraudster, accusing her of signing on to the film under false pretenses to wrest creative control from Baldoni.
Have you seen that clip? Because I haven't, and I'm about to play it for you right now.
Yeah, when I went in the meetings, I would just seem like I'm just there to be the actor and ready to get the gig. I wouldn't reveal that I actually need to have authorship in order to feel fulfilled.
That is not a clip of an innocent woman simply sitting there and talking about her aspirations and dreams of becoming a writer and a director. No. This is a woman who blatantly admitted to the exact thing that Justin Baldoni is accusing her of, which is hijacking a production under false pretenses. And now that's okay? So you have a problem with Taylor Swift crying and complaining about grudges just to make billions, but you're okay with a woman openly admitting to hijacking sets and productions?
On the internet, it seems, being female and slightly annoying is now a far greater offense than being accused of sexual misconduct.
No, lying, and potentially in Blake's case, and even in Meghan's case, trying to actively destroy other people's lives and careers. That's a lot more serious than simply being slightly annoying.
Tellingly,
speaking of annoying, somebody else needs to proofread E.J. Dixon's articles because the overuse of tellingly is starting to get quite annoying too.
Plenty of people have also started, unfavorably, comparing Markle and Lively with Amber Heard. When Depp sued a UK tabloid for libel in 2020, the court ruled against him, finding that 12 of Heard's 14 allegations against him were proved to the civil standard. But this isn't what happened in the 2022 defamation trial in the US. Heard was cast as an opportunist, a slut, a psycho, and a liar, resulting in an outpouring of support for Depp online.
This is the oldest trick in the book when people cover Amber Heard, claiming that Johnny lost in the UK, which he did, and was successful in the US. Now, lucky for you, I am a lawyer who has covered this case, the Johnny Depp case, both in the UK and the US, all the way back in 2020. In fact, that's how my YouTube channel started. And yes, while Johnny did lose his UK claim, one must understand the differences. First of all, Amber Heard was not the defendant in that case, which, to be fair to E.J. Dixon, she does state that he sued a UK tabloid, which he did. But because Amber wasn't a defendant, she was a mere witness, she wasn't subject to the rules of discovery. And so Johnny's team couldn't dig as deep into her as they did in the US. Also, there was the fact that the case was heard by a single judge. And judges are only human. They are not infallible. They make mistakes, they have biases, and let's not pretend we don't live in a world where, as this article confirms, a lot of people still hold on to the belief that when it comes to man versus woman, the woman is always the victim and the man is always somehow in the wrong. Some people just don't want to see it the other way. I've lived through this. There are men who are stalked and harassed and even sexually assaulted by women, and everyone around them in their circle doesn't care. They downplay it. Why? Because it's a woman. And I've seen this firsthand happen to someone very close to me. So while I can't prove that the judge was biased, his judgment was enough to convince me, because it was completely, as I said all those years ago, devoid of any judicial reasoning. It was all, Amber said it, I'm gonna believe it. Whereas in the US, Amber was the defendant, she was subjected to the rules of discovery, and a jury, an impartial jury, watched her on the stand as she lied through her teeth. They didn't buy it, at least not to a civil standard. So there's your difference for you. There is the explanation in case anyone is wondering. And those jury members were sequestered. They were carefully picked. As far as I'm aware, they were picked on the basis that they didn't really know much about the case. What was happening in the outside world had nothing to do with the jury's deliberations because they had no idea what was happening. That's how the justice system, or at least a proper justice system, works.
Much of the groundswell of pro-Depp sentiment on social media was later found to be inorganic.
Again with that whole bot argument, my goodness. I mean, Amber Heard, to be fair, is the one who started it, as far as I'm aware. All the way back in 2020, the tiny minority of us who were defending Johnny at that time were called Russian bots, and I even made a whole parody about it back in the day. It's getting old. And it's not a coincidence that Bot Sentinel, spearheaded by Christopher Boozy, who was notoriously a pro-Meghan, Sussex squatty, also ran the numbers for Amber and proclaimed, huzzah, they're all fake, when, spoiler alert, they weren't. Twitter actually came out in Meghan Markle's instance to deny Christopher Boozy's claim and said these accounts are real. But of course, then that didn't stop Blake Lively from following in the footsteps of the other two women and claiming that all the hate online is inorganic and a result of astroturfing.
As is the case with the backlash against Lively and Markle, it was mostly women who fueled the campaign against Heard.
Boy, E.J. Dixon's doing a very poor job of hiding her own misogyny, isn't she? Where is all this hate for women coming from? It was mostly women, again, because they were the target audience who were interested in the topic. There were men who were interested, don't get me wrong, but for some reason, women gravitate towards these kinds of cases. And don't forget that most of the world supported Amber Heard first. In 2016, still a kid at university, very much in the same time frame that Meghan, met Harry, and I believed Amber. Now, granted, I didn't look into the case at all. I heard about it and I went, oh, bummer. Am I going to start boycotting Johnny's movies now? But I believed her until the audio recordings were leaked in early 2020. I believe it was February 2020. And I heard the truth straight out of Amber's mouth for myself. And I think the rest of the world had a very similar reaction. Because that's what happens, surprise, surprise, when the truth comes out.
Many onlookers, particularly feminists, struggled to wrap their heads around this and wondered if it was a harbinger of more to come. Now we seem to know the answer.
No, I don't seem to know the answer. I am very confused, actually. What's the answer? What? Is it in the next paragraph? Because this is what the next paragraph says.
Why are so many convinced that these women are dishonest?
Because they are proven liars. EJ, come on! Keep up!
And why are they so angry about it?
I wouldn't say people are angry about it, at least I'm not. Some people get really ticked off when they see liars get away with it. I think that's what makes people riled up, actually. Seeing evil people, whether they're men or women, getting away with it. It's a human thing. We want justice. That's why we set up justice systems for thousands of years now. It's built into us. If you got a problem with that, take it up with the big boss, if you believe in him.
Is it because they simply find them irritating? Or are they just that susceptible to social media smear campaigns?
Oh, so we're just limited to these two options? It's either that we find them irritating, which quite frankly they are with their whole fake attitude, or we're all just susceptible to social media smear campaigns, which don't exist, by the way, because organic criticism in response to bad behavior is not an online social media smear campaign, EJ.
Is it really so hard to believe that misogyny is so deeply ingrained in our culture that even beautiful, wealthy women can suffer from its effects?
Yes, it actually is really hard to believe, even for you, actually, because you called Taylor Swift out for the exact same thing. So make up your mind, EJ. Is Taylor Swift not a, as you call them here, beautiful, wealthy woman? Can she not suffer from its ill effects? Well, according to you, she can't, because she makes billions, as you said.
Maybe they see something in Markle and Lively's stories that they don't want to see. Maybe it's easier to just not look.
I think you're projecting a little too much there, EJ. Because in all three cases, Meghan, Blake, Amber, the truth is what changed people's minds. Amber Heard was not thrust into the world as a reviled, hated, ridiculed person. And then when it comes to Meghan, as I mentioned earlier, everybody loved Meghan at one point. And then as the years went by and her mask slipped off time and time and time again, until it just fell off and she never even bothered to pick it back up, people started to see through her. And now Blake is experiencing the exact same thing. Jada Pinkett Smith wasn't even mentioned in this article, and she's been through a very similar trajectory. People didn't really start calling her out and criticizing her until that infamous Red Table interview with her husband, Will Smith. So the truth eventually came out in all three cases, and it's still coming out in the Blake Lively case, staring us all in the face, including you, and you're still denying it. Why? I don't know, but maybe it's easier to just not look.